Welcome, friends, and nice to see you again. This is Richard from Lost Arts Radio. We're here with Dr. Gabriel Cousens, and he has some interesting comments on issues of religion and morality in the world today, and should be amazing to get into. So let's see what he has to say. Welcome, Gabriel. Nice to see you again.
Okay, well, thank you. It's always nice to work with Richard and Doug in the background. So we're going to first start out with a little bit of dancing to get the energy going. Let me just adjust my picture a little bit. Good. Okay. So let's dance for a few minutes to just get the positive energy going, and then we'll do. Okay. Very good. So let's take a moment just to meditate for a minute or two, and we'll go into our discussion. Yo. Okay, welcome everybody. Welcome to All Love. Thank you for participating, getting the kind of the different messages out there. Today I want to talk about the moral complexity that is involved with a struggle between the two worlds, the Islamic world and primarily in the Judeo-Christian world. And part of the struggle is that we really have two different sets of moral codes. We have the biblical codes, like the 10 speakings, and we have more the Islamic codes, which are distinctly different in many ways than the 10 speakings that we get in the biblical codes. And it's easy to say, and this is why I think it's an important topic, it's easy to say, oh, they're just morally corrupt, they're just terrible, this is an abomination. And we're looking at either side, because we can see that in the moral religious code, when we boil it down, not every single statement, but the moral religious code in Islamic is, part of it, clearly what the Quran says. If you see a Jew behind a rock, kill him. If you see anyone who isn't a believer, convert or die. And then there are clearly different rules about how women are treated. And these are things that are held as really religious, tenements. Between harems and women's property, in the Muslim tradition. And in the Hebrew, the biblical tradition, the relationship between male and female is about creating oneness and is about existing as a spiritual path. And we use a yogic term, a tantric spiritual path, not tantra like sexual things, that's included, but a bigger, as a spiritual path involving the sun and the moon, involving the different forces that male and female bring to the relationship to help the transformation of each other and the other person. The teaching is one becomes two, we divide and then becomes one again. So when we look at the world views, there is a world struggle. I'll put it that way. The Judeo-Christian is, holds since 3,500, the last 3,500 years, the biblical teachings of the 10 speakings, also known as the 10 commandments. They were never commandments. They were called suggestions of how to live. And then it gets spread out even more, like 620. But we start with the 10. And also known as the 10 commandments, as I said, 10 commandments, but it really was the 10 speakings. 10 suggestions, as ordering a moral way of life for how to be in the world, how to live in the world, and how to create a foundation for spiritual transformation to evolve. But you've got to have a foundation. This is also true in the yama and niyamas in the Indian scriptures. The do's, the don'ts, same thing. and those different principles like ahimsa and things like that. So the principles are there in the different traditions as how to live a holy life. And then that holy life helps you transform into living a more spiritual, awakened life. And emerge and evolve back to the one. Now, in the Judeo-Christian and also in the Hindu scriptures, it is all about merging back into the one. Okay, that's what it is. It doesn't really, people talk about going to heaven, but if you look deeply at these traditions, in the Torah tradition, you have 7 heavens, and it's more evolved and more evolved until there's the statement given to Moses, you can't know God and live. What does that mean? It means to know God is you give up your sense of separate identity and you become one. That's what that means. Now, there isn't really part of your evolution to have a political or world dominating thing. To spread it is something that's recommended because you want to teach what you think is the truth. Now, in the Muslim traditions, you also have a worldview. It also has its moral tenets. And it's deeper. I'm not here to debate the difference, one being better than the other. I'm looking at a bigger principle is that what we see in the world today is a pretty clear struggle over a religious worldview. I don't say spiritual because ultimately when you look at the deeper points even in Islam and with the Sufis and so forth, we're still going back to the oneness. But what I'm saying is that we're looking at a way of life that is to elevate your consciousness. Now, there are obviously some, big differences. And the point I'm making here is that in the Muslim tradition, it's distinctly different than the Judeo-Christian tradition of how you evolve spiritually. Now, it's easy to judge the differences. From a Western point of view, you can clearly see, hey, what you're doing, if you're Muslim, is not in line with, the 10 speaking. But from the Islamic tradition, in the Quran, you really have a different set of moral rules. Now, what is going on, a level of what is going on in the world today, is the conflict between those two sets of moral rules. And again, I don't want to get into specifics, but it's very clear, and what to do with that. And part of the conflict is that in the Quranic teachings, it is about taking over the world and convert or die. It's clearly said. It's not like a debate. In the Judeo-Christian tradition, you find elements of that, more in certain levels of Christianity, but it isn't a worldview where the whole world will be converted to Christianity. And now it may be that they move in that direction. But what I'm trying to get at is that nothing is to be done by force. Now, of course, the human element comes in, and of course you see the missionaries, doing forced conversion with the Native Americans. All that did happen, but that was a perversion of the principles. And so what we're looking at today is this very big, almost cosmic struggle about what's the direction of the planet. Okay? The Muslims have clearly stated that they want to dominate and control the world, convert or die everyone to Islam. That's a clear statement. I don't think we see that so much in the Judeo-Christian religion anymore. It was part of the European Christianity and the Crusades and so forth for a few hundred years. So these are the struggles we're seeing in a different way than this is all about war and so forth. We're talking more about a way of life, a morality, and a belief systems. Now, as we get more evolved, we understand that all the belief systems are an illusion. That's why it's so interesting to talk about these two belief systems we're having, and I'm making it simple. They're all very more sophisticated than two other variations. But then at the higher levels, you come to the oneness. Can't know God. So that's the evolution that needs to happen. Now, when you're trying to convert people to a religion, the movement towards the higher awareness becomes somewhat stifled because you're out of line. Okay? I know that's another issue that we face. And of course, another religion is communism. And there also, we have a convert or die type situation. It's just a little bit more subtle unless you're in the prison camp and they're going to take out your organs. But we have that energy also, convert or die. So I'm trying to create an overview. We're trying to create a kind of an overview of what's going on in the world at a different level. People truly believe in their systems. Okay? Now, I'm not trying to be liberal here. I don't agree with the Muslim, the Quranic teachings for a variety of angles. And I don't really agree with communism for more than a variety of angles. I believe that the balance between the group and the individual is part of the evolutionary path, and the relationship between men and women are really designed to help people evolve. Now, I'm not excluding people who are gay or that kind of thing, because you can get those kinds of evolutionary things in a variety of relationships. But primarily, we're looking at men and women as your archetype since the time of Adam and Hava. So we've been given these patterns, and for us to choose what is really working. So I'm going to turn over to Richard now, if he has any comments.
It's such a deep issue, Gabriel. You said that the point is to choose a system to live by. And I'm saying that the real point is to get back to our normal nature, which is beyond the systems.
Right. Well, which is how I ended up.
Right. And the sooner the better, because in the meantime, there's all this conflict, fighting, killing, suffering. And it's not our normal state. I don't think it was what was intended. You know, all the systems say things about the benefit of suffering and going through all this garbage that we're going through, and I don't agree with that. Our normal nature doesn't need it. You know, torture for spiritual benefit is an oxymoron. And I'd like to see us get beyond belief completely. And I don't think that's impossible. But the question is, can it be done? Will it be done? What will happen? And we're watching that play out.
Yeah, well, it can be done. And we know, for example, in the Buddhist system, there was a 100-year reign by Ashoka. I think it was 400 BC, where people adopted the whole society, the full Buddhist teachings, and everyone, possibly the highest culture we've had in human history. So we know it can be done.
So
they couldn't sustain it, beyond 100 years, but they did it for 100 years. Go ahead.
Right. And I'm saying once it gets done for real, it will be sustained. Because at that point, it's self-perpetuated.
Right.
And it's not because everybody shares the same system. It's because they're in touch with who they are.
Which, in a way, is sharing the same system.
They don't need a system.
Exactly. That's the point I'm making.
In the meantime, it's like living in it. Before that happens, the experience is like living in a giant mental hospital where the staff and the patients are all crazy and they don't know who they are. And that's what we're experiencing now. And we're so used to it, we don't realize how abnormal it is.
I think people are realizing that this is getting out of hand. I think the U.S. politics has degenerated to such a level of confusion that people are saying, none of this is making a lot of sense. This is really, too little information, too many secrets, too this, whatever. I'm not making a political comment. I'm really making a societal comment of confusion that people are beginning to feel because the foundations are getting lost.
Yeah, I totally agree.
And it's actually quite serious. And some people even feel that the lack of moral clarity in the U.S. is pointing towards really downfall of the society and really Western civilization. And other people are working really hard to make that happen. So it's pretty serious.
Right. It's like 2-year-olds playing with deadly weapons.
Yeah. But I'm not talking nuclear, bomb. I'm talking about the confusion of is there a right or wrong, and it's all relative. And a moral code gives you a frame of reference to live by.
As long as you're not conscious, it's helpful. It's not the goal.
Yeah, but even if you are conscious, the moral code gives him a framework of mutual understanding of how you operate.
Right, but I'm saying that understanding is needed when you're not very conscious. When you are, the code becomes irrelevant.
Right. When you're totally awake, there's no code needed. But that requires everyone else to be awake, not just you.
Well, it spreads. I'm saying and this is all in theory right now because it's not happening. But in theory, it's contagious and it would spread.
Well, I think a little bit is spreading. I mean, it's spreading in two different directions. You have a moral degeneration, which is a lot easier to follow, which we see in the Western culture, played out in America, played out in Great Britain, and played out in France, and other components, Germany. And so it is being played out. And it's causing a whole lot of mental illness. The rates of mental illness have definitely increased as a result of that because there's no foundation for how to organize yourself in the world.
Right, but the main problem is not the lack of a correct code, it's the lack of consciousness.
Yeah, but you guys, starting with a moral code does help, at least there's an agreement of how we're operating.
Right. It's a step towards consciousness.
Yeah. So this is kind of what the U.S. and really Western civilization is facing is, when you're asking questions, can a man have a baby? Or can a biological male have a baby? You're talking about a kind of a perversion of reality, and you're not talking about organic reality. You're talking about more psychic realities. You can create your own pretend realities, and you can do that to an extent, but society doesn't really work that way because it just isn't designed ever throughout history to have that kind of moral ambiguity about what is even biological truth.
Right. And I'm just saying that if you're in touch with yourself and you have some consciousness, you don't need to check the moral code to see what's right.
Yeah, so at that point, you're attuned to the actual deeper morality. You're attuned to that. You don't have to think about it. You don't need a rule book.
Right.
You naturally act in a way that is moral and ultimately coming from, it takes you to a spiritual place.
Yeah, I'm saying
let's say you're in a spiritual place, and naturally your actions are going to be considered moral.
Right, and I'm saying that's our normal state.
Yes, it is a normal state. No question about it. So
the whole point is to get back to that.
Or to get forward into it. I don't,
Well,
I'm not sure if we ever really reached a majority moral state.
I'm not talking about numbers at all or majority or anything like that.
Yeah.
I'm saying for each individual, that's where we came from.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't think it's happened in the world as far as universal acceptance.
Right. In fact, it's going the other way right now, temporarily.
Right.
And as the pendulum swings, it will come back. You see, it really doesn't work. People begin to turn around. Now, I think we've already seen that in the political spectrum. Not that conservatives are perfect, but what we see is the Alexander, AOC type realities can sound nice, but they aren't realities. They're theories. They're sound bites. So that's what I'm talking about. That
I'm seeing a big drama play out at the moment in the U.S. with the whole Trump issues.
Yes.
I mean, dealing with the stress of trying to stay balanced, working with all this stuff.
Well, can you describe the stress a little bit?
Not really. I mean, the stress of working with the forces of corruption and evil is overwhelming. And I think Trump is trying to hold it together while dealing with that stuff. And
Right.
there's some shakiness appearing and trying to get back. And according to some people, he's dealing with health concerns at the same time.
Yeah.
Which make it more challenging.
Definitely challenging. And I think your point, Richard, it has to come back to it has to start with the individual.
Yeah, this is not about a majority or waiting for other people to accept it. Any individual that wants harmony in their life has to get back to consciousness.
But there has to be, at some level, this is what we're talking about, a kind of group level of consensus of a higher quality.
Waiting for that is unnecessary.
Well, you want to work on yourself,
Right.
but the support of other people who are, living that elevated morality is helpful.
Oh yeah, it definitely helps if you get that. But I don't know how to predict when you're going to get it or not get it, or when it turns out.
It's happening. It's happening. So I think these are, important things to kind of consider in this big picture. I'm just going to kind of end with a little bit of a quote. Set your life on fire and seek those who flame your flames, who fan your flames. Because that's kind of what we're saying. You got to be in fire, and the fire is the power of the divine. Set your life aflame with the power of the divine, and seek people who help elevate, who fan the flames. So may everyone be blessed that we find that in our life, and we elevate our consciousness, and directly and indirectly the consciousness of the world. So peace be with you. Shalom, shalom, shalom. Om shanti, shanti, shanti. Om Gatakiwas.
I totally agree. I can't add much to that message, Gabriel. I think it's beautiful, and the way to solve this issue of being currently in a giant mental hospital with craziness all around is to find normalcy and guidance inside. And fortunately, that spirit, no matter what you call it, is within every single person.
Right.
It's waiting for us.
Okay. Well, I thank you, Richard, and I think Doug behind the scenes. I think everyone who's listening to us and spreading it. Thank you so much for really sharing this awareness. It's really, really important. Not for us, personally, but it's important for us personally, but really for the world. So peace be with you.
Peace be with you. I agree, Gabriel. Wish everyone success in finding the inner connection and remembering what you're here for. Use your time well.
Nice.
We'll meet you here again next time.